Good morning, everyone. We are continuing on. This is the third in the series. I don't know if I'm going to get it done. Chapter 22 was big of Luke. Now we're into chapter 23. If we can get to 24, we'll get done. We're going to try that today. I'm not trying to rush through it. It's just that I'm trying to get the story out without doing. I'm not doing a lot of rabbit trails because this is important. We have to focus on this message. We know that Jesus died for us, but what does it really mean? What did he really do? We've already seen where he's been beaten and spit on, and it's not going to get better. The cross is the ultimate in punishment. The Romans came up with it long before Jesus was around. Not sure who started it before that, but they saw it and liked it. And capital punishment is a deterrent to some. Death is a deterrent for everyone. Okay, so we're going to continue on. Story of Jesus' last week, I guess would be. Luke 23:1. And the whole company of them rose up and brought him before Pilate. Jesus had the first Pilate program. And they began to accuse him. Some of you would get that, some of you won't. And if you got it, you should laugh. I did when I thought of it. And they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man perverting our nation and forbidding to give tribute to Caesar." He never did that. That's a lie. Render under Caesar what is Caesar's. He already was tested and he passed that test. They couldn't trap him, but they're going to lie now that they can't do it. The devil's good at that. We saw that in the last administration. Just lie. Blatantly lie. Don't even flinch. Don't bat an eye. Can sit there and just look you straight in the face and lie to you. And even know that you're aware that it's a lie and still just look straight forward and tell the lie. Satan is determined, and the people that follow him, deliberately or not, if you're not following Jesus, you're following Satan. You can't be sitting on the fence. God doesn't like that. Forbidding to give tribute to Caesar and saying that he himself is Christ a king. Well, in Rome, there was only one king, and he forbid anybody else to be a king. So they were trying to, again, trap him. Again, Jesus didn't say these things. Even when asked, well, if you say I am, he didn't come out and say it. And Pilate asked him, saying, "Art thou the king of the Jews?" And he answered him and said, "Thou sayest." See? He wouldn't even come out and say it right directly to him. He didn't lie. He says, "If you say so," that's what "thou sayest" basically means. And Pilate said unto the chief priests and the multitudes, "I find no fault in this man." There was nothing wrong with him. Even in life, he didn't sin enough to go to the cross. It's all fabricated. He went to the cross completely blameless. But they were more urgent, saying, "He stirreth up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, and beginning from Galilee, even unto this place." Pilate was smart. He knew that he wasn't going to please this group, so he gave him to Herod. Verse 6, "But when Pilate heard, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he knew that he was of Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him unto Herod, who himself was in Jerusalem in these days. Now when Herod saw Jesus, he was exceedingly glad. What can I get from this guy? What can he do? Can he give me some miracles? Can he make me look good? That's all he cared about. For he was a long time desirous to see him, because he had heard concerning him, and he hoped to see some miracles done by him. And he questioned him in many words, but he answered him nothing. Jesus didn't. He could have argued his way out, because they didn't have any evidence. He chose not to because he knew he had to die for us. He had to suffer for us. He had to spill his blood for us. And he wasn't going to let anything stop it. And he could have. He could have talked his way out of it. He could have sent a legion of angels to save him. But that's not what he wanted to do. The whole purpose of his life was for this moment. And the chief priests and the scribes stood vehemently accusing him. And Herod with his soldiers set him at naught and mocked him, arraying him in gorgeous apparel, and sent him back to Pilate. Herod didn't need him. And Herod and Pilate became friends. Friends like those who need enemies. With each other that very day, for before they were enmity between themselves. So even Jesus brought them together. Isn't that great? And Pilate called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, and said unto them, You brought unto me this man as one that perverted the people. And behold, I have examined him before you, and found no fault in this man, touching those things whereof you accuse him. No, nor yet Herod, for he sent him back unto us, and behold, nothing worthy of death has been done by him. That should have been the end of it. But Satan was given this day, and he thought this was his victory, so he wasn't going to give up. I will therefore chastise him and release him. Now, he must needs release unto them at the feast one prisoner, so they could have one prisoner released. He figured they'd pick him, Jesus. So they went ahead and made that offer. But they cried out all together, saying, Away with this man, and release Barabbas, a known thief, troublemaker, getting into fights. There's a good movie out about that. Is that my eagle? I've got two eagles that live right across the lake over here, and I thought I saw one fly by. I'll go check on it in a bit. If he caught a fish, he's going to be out there eating it on the bank, like he always does. My phone just isn't good enough to... I've gotten pictures, and you can see a blur, and you'd have to take my word for it that it was an eagle. I can't zoom in that far. Don't have a professional camera anymore, because I mess those up. Okay. So they wanted Barabbas, one who for a certain insurrection made in the city, and for murder was cast into prison. And Pilate spake unto them again, desiring to release Jesus. But they shouted, saying, Crucify. You can get a crowd ginned up. The rich guys. Watching people come in. I got to watch on things when I'm here to make sure that everything's okay. The people that are being paid to cause riots around and burn Teslas and all this stuff, they're getting paid, but they can gin up an audience. They're getting paid to do that. And he said unto them a third time, Why, what evil has this man done? I found no cause of death in him. I will therefore chastise him and release him. But they were urgent with loud voices, asking that he might be crucified. And their voices, they're trying to keep the Jews happy because they're relatively, after this and after they, once Jesus is gone and the Christians are basically moving off into the other areas, Jerusalem didn't do very well, and they started rebelling. But up to this point, Herod's been doing a good job keeping them appeased, modifying the temple and making it look beautiful and things like that. Other building sites. He built a mansion over on Masada on the side of the mountain over there. So he spent a lot of money on the Jews So they were content to deal with their occupation. So the last thing they wanted was for people to get all upset and start fighting and to get back to Rome. Okay, and so their voices prevailed, and Pilate gave sentence that what they asked for, that should be done. And he released him for their insurrection and murder has been cast, and the murderer has, and he released him that for insurrection and murder had been cast into prison, whom they asked for, but Jesus he delivered up to their will. He should have released Barabbas and just held on to Jesus, but he didn't. He gave them both, trying to appease them, to keep the crowd from going crazy. When they led him away, they laid hold upon one Simon of Cyrene, coming from the country, and laid on him the cross to bear it after Jesus. Jesus was in very good shape early on, but he's had a few days of them beating him and probably not being fed properly, and so he's not in good shape. So Simon of Cyrene gets to carry the cross for him. It's a privilege, frankly, to do that, but they didn't know back then what was going on. And there followed him a great multitude of the people and of the women who bewailed and lamented for him. But Jesus, turning unto them, said, Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children, because this is a damning move that they're doing. This isn't a replacement theology thing, but this is not good. They will pay a price for this. They will have their city destroyed and their temple destroyed in 40 years. For behold, the day is coming in which they shall say, Blessed are the barren and the wombs of that are bare, and the breasts that never gave suck. You don't want children in the days coming. And they shall begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and the hills cover us. That's our Revelation quote, looking forward. Jesus writes Revelation anyway, dictating it to John. So he knows all this stuff even before he died. For if they do these things in the green tree, what will be done in the dry? What's going to happen when you take the Christians off the earth because of the rapture? We have the tribulation, the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls. It won't be good. And there were also two others, malefactors, led with him to be put to death. Simple thieves. And when they came into the place which is called the Skull, there they crucified him, and the malefactors, one on the right hand and one on the left. And Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They were going to kill him, and he asked for their forgiveness. I don't know how much more gracious someone can be. And parting his garments, fulfilling prophecy, among them they cast lots, fulfilling prophecy, and the people stood beholding, and the rulers also scoffed at him, saying, He saved others, let him save himself, if this is the Christ of God, his chosen. Mocking him. They didn't believe he was, but he didn't try to prove it, because he didn't come to fight back physically. This was a spiritual war, and he's about to win it when he goes into paradise and frees them and goes to hell and laughs at Satan and leaves. And the soldiers also mocked him, coming to him and offering him vinegar. If you're dry and thirsty and your lips are cracked, putting vinegar on him would burn. And saying, no, if thou art the King of the Jews, save thyself. And there was also a subscription over him, This is the King of the Jews. They wrote it on the plank and put it above him, nailed it to the cross with him. And one of the malefactors that was nailing him, saying, Art thou Christ? Save thyself and us. But the other answered, rebuking the first thief, dost thou not even fear God, seeing that thou art in the same condemnation? They were all going to die. And this was in Jerusalem. So all three were Jews. They knew about God. And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds, but this man has done nothing amiss. They all knew. There were plenty of witnesses in the courtyard. When Pilate said, I can't find anything in him, Herod sent him back because he couldn't find anything. But the priests still wanted him crucified because they threatened their little power base. And he said, Jesus, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. He had respect for God and for Jesus. That saved his life. And he said unto him, verily I say unto thee, today you shall be with me in paradise. Wasn't going to stay there very long because Jesus went and emptied paradise, but they were going to meet there. Paradise was a holding area, sort of the Catholics' purgatory or whatever their stuff is. I don't remember that stuff. It's been too long since I studied it. And it was now about the 6th hour, and darkness came over the whole land until the 9th hour. The sun's light failing, and the veil of the temple was rent in the midst. It wasn't torn from the bottom up. If you had an earthquake, it would tear from the bottom up because the ground would move. This tore from the top down. Who tore it? God tore it. And Jesus crying. So these stories are slightly different. Matthew's is slightly different. Same story, but different point of view. This big elephant, we're all describing the elephant, remember? Each side looks different. Same elephant. Jesus crying with a loud voice, saying, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. And having said this, he gave up the ghost. And when the centurion saw what was done, he glorified God, saying, certainly this was a righteous man. The Roman guard. And all the multitudes that came together to his sight when they beheld the things that were done, returned smiting their breasts. Ah, ah, ah. Angry, not with God, but with what man was doing, and they couldn't stop it. And all his acquaintance and the woman that followed with him from Galilee stood afar off seeing these things. So he's dead. He's a sinner. He's going to hell. Jesus is not the sinner, but he's playing one for us. So he has to go to hell, which is where all sinners are going, unless we can get a ticket punched to go to heaven. Jesus is the only one with a little click thing. And behold, a man named Joseph, who was a counselor, a good and righteous man, Joseph of Arimathea. He had not consented to their counsel indeed. A man of Arimathea, a city of the Jews, who was looking for the kingdom of God, came to Jerusalem on a pilgrimage. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. He took it down and wrapped it in linen cloth and laid him in a tomb that was hewn in stone, where never a man had lain before, brand new. And it was the day of the preparation, and the Sabbath drew on. And the women who had come with him out of Galilee followed after, and beheld the tomb, and how his body was laid. And then they returned and prepared spices and ointments, and on the Sabbath they rested according to the commandment. They couldn't finish what they were doing because it was the Sabbath, and the Sabbath commands you can't do anything. Now, it really didn't say you can't do anything. It had a limit of things that you could do and couldn't do, but the religious leaders piled on. If a fly lands on your nose, you can't swat it, because that's work. I mean, Stupid stuff, just to pile on to make the people feel more and more burdened. Jesus chastised them for that. Didn't affect them because they were of their father the devil at this point. There was no Christians back then. There was no spirit indwelling. So if you didn't follow the law perfectly, you were open to Satan. All right, how are we doing on time? Well, the part that I want to save, the resurrection, I think we're at Luke 24, so I'm going to stop here. And then we're going to change preparing for the cross, because he's been to the cross. And the next message will be, he has risen. We know that Friday would have been the time that he was crucified. He laid in the grave. Saturday. It's supposed to be 3 days. I don't know. We've always had arguments over this. People have had different opinions and different calculations. It never works out. It doesn't matter. If it says 3 days, it was 3 days. I don't know how you can get that in a weekend. I've tried to squeeze 3 days into a weekend for my whole life, and I've never been able to do it. So I come into work late on Monday or Tuesday. In any case, Jesus did this for us. You need to be eternally grateful. You need to thank him every day. Because the people on that cross, himself included, were going to hell. Now, Jesus had to, after we stopped off in paradise, he had to go to hell. He had to confront Satan. Satan thought he won. Probably walking around elbowing everybody. I won. I won. And Jesus said, no, you didn't. I wasn't there. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But I'm sure Satan was madder than hell. Pun intended. All right. Thank him again next time you talk to him for what he did. We're going to have an eternity to thank him, but that's not enough, I don't think. Till we meet in the clouds. God bless.